Representative
I can feel
Williams.
it. All right,
Everybody.
I got our special guest here tonight. This is Josh Williams. He is a state representative all the way from Toledo. Actually, you're still in Toledo probably, but it's good to see you. Good to see you, man. So we want to
Thank you guys for having me on.
Yeah, hey, it's our pleasure. Believe me, it's our pleasure. All right, so what we want to talk a lot about tonight is the fraud going on in Columbus. So with the Somalians. And a lot of times I slip of the tongue and I say the Salamians, but they're not, you can't do that. They're Somalians, not Salamians, but anyhow. All right. Let's do this because I'm gonna hop right into it. And then 8 o'clock tonight we have Chris Long. Just make sure we get this in also. We got Chris Long from the Ohio Christian Alliance coming on at 8 o'clock, and he wants to talk about the fraud in Columbus as well. So hey, it's more the merrier. But Josh, you put out a memo that 42 Republicans signed, 42 state representatives signed, and let me just read a little bit of this here, and then I want you to just give us a little bit of info about yourself here. But it says that a letter co-signed by 42 representatives urging Carol Wendt, Director of the Ohio Department of Children and Youth, to increase the frequency of unannounced inspections of child care facilities, specifically in Columbus, to ensure greater accountability. And then there was another paragraph in here that I really liked, and it says, immediately suspend or withhold any further state payments to any child care facility where inspections or audits indicate that there is fraud, false attendance, or other material misrepresentations pending full investigation and adjudication. So it sounds like you mean business. I just wanted you to comment on that. But before you comment on that, just tell us a little bit about yourself. So you're out in Toledo, right? That's where your jurisdiction is?
So I'm born and raised in Toledo. I represent District 44. I live in Sylvania Township, which is just a few blocks outside of Toledo area. I represent portions of Lucas County, Ottawa County, and Wood County, and I am the declared Republican candidate running against Marcy Kaptur here in the 9th Congressional District here in Northwest Ohio.
That is excellent, because it's time for Marcy Kaptur to take a long walk off a short Lake Erie pier, as I would say. After 44 years, get rid of her. But that's good to hear. So you will be running for that congressional seat, 13, I believe it is.
9.
It's 9? So it'd be
9.
the 9th congressional seat where Marcy Kaptur's at. And right now we've got a 10-5, 10 Republicans, 5 Democrats. So if you can steal her seat, we would be 11-4. That helps Trump. And I'm sure that would help you a lot, too. So can you give us a little background on that memo that everybody signed and what it's all about?
Yeah, so I think everybody across the nation saw the reporting that came out of Minnesota and the country's largest Somali population and the widespread fraud that was uncovered there, not just in daycare, but also when it came to feeding kids during COVID, homelessness response and housing during COVID. We saw it with daycare, Medicaid fraud. We're seeing widespread fraud that came out of Minnesota, and there was investigations that came towards Ohio, and there was widespread reporting to my office about suspected fraud, waste, and abuse in our daycare providers here in the state of Ohio. So, that concern wasn't just to my office, it was widespread across the state. Many of my representatives in the House of Representatives, where I serve as Majority Whip, all got together and we're hearing those concerns of our constituents. And we put our minds together and we said, well, what can we do? Well, in the interim, we can ask for an increased effort under the current authority that we gave them as legislators. So just a few years ago, 2 years ago, we actually established the Department of Children and Youth. We consolidated a lot of the power, a lot of the administrative roles into one department so there would be better, consistent oversight because we have heard reports in the past of this type of waste, fraud, and abuse in these type of programs. So we consolidated those efforts into one department, and we gave them expanded authority to be able to investigate these allegations, including unannounced visits. So typically, each one of our daycare providers gets one visit at least a year. but there's over 5,100 daycare providers in the state of Ohio. So as you can see, that is going to be tough to try to get more than one visit on each one of those providers. So we're calling for increased effort in the Columbus area because that's where we're currently receiving reports of potential waste, fraud, and abuse. Increased efforts, namely using unannounced visits and audits of attendance records and finance records, and if there is suspicion of potential fraud, to immediately cut off state funding to that facility until a full investigation is done. And it is determined whether or not they are in compliance with Ohio law and federal law. If they're found not to be in compliance, we want that case, turned over to the Attorney General's office for prosecution. And we're also looking to increase the penalties here in the state of Ohio when individuals commit fraud and the source of that fraud is state or federal tax dollars.
Okay, very good. So I want to expand on that here in just a minute, but there is something that I was kind of interested in showing you, and I want people to understand that there is a very, very serious fraud problem in Ohio, in Columbus, with the Somalians. And everybody's talking about it. Everybody's talking, which is why I'm so glad you were able to come on the show tonight. But watch this.
Nick Shirley, I hope you see this video. Please come to Columbus, Ohio. And if you come to Columbus, Ohio, you will find the exact same fraud.
More Somali fraud has been exposed out of Ohio. This is getting out of hand, and they're all being exposed.
You get money through the state of Ohio. This is a money that gets...
According to one Midwestern Rhino Republican governor, apparently fraud is just part of doing business now.
It's a daycare center owned by Somalians and stuff like that.
Have you ever seen any kids in this place here?
No, not that I know of. I just seen it, the building itself. I've never seen nobody come out the building or go in the building.
Everyone has been talking about Minnesota. Nick Shirley, the empty daycares and millions or potentially billions of dollars gone. But we're going to be talking about Ohio because that might be next. That might be Minnesota 2.0 because right now people are walking into daycare centers in Columbus, Ohio, and they're seeing the same exact things. No kids, locked doors, people getting aggressive when asked basic questions. You also see some potential SNAP benefits that's being taken away too.
Somalis in Ohio are allegedly running EBT fraud rings using SNAP benefits to stock their restaurants, skimming cards to make millions. More than 34,000 Ohio households have been duped out of nearly 17 million in SNAP benefits from June 2023 to December 2024, with Somali migrant criminals using skimming devices at grocery stores to clone magnetic strip cards and steal the money, according to the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services.
All right, so I played that because there's a lot of YouTubers that are getting out there now with their own cameras, knocking on these facilities. Nobody is there in Ohio. Nobody has been there at these daycare centers. And we're seeing like a duplication of what took place in Minnesota. And, oh, by the way, if you're in the chat, please chat. We'll try to get those questions. Love to see them. Love to see them. But any thoughts on that video, that little clip there?
Yeah, I mean, I got to applaud the citizen journalists that exposed the fraud in Minnesota and some potential fraud here in the state of Ohio. I mean, that's what the modern age of media is able to do. This stuff has been covered up for a long time. These individuals are very clever in the way that they approach the waste, fraud, and abuse that they are committing. And we are committed to making sure that we put in processes and administrative rules that allow us to go in, investigate, and prosecute and steadfast. And if these individuals are found to commit fraud, not only do I want them put in prison for a long time, because I saw in Minnesota where people were stealing, committing fraud in tens of millions of dollars, and they were getting 10 and 20 and 30-month sentences. In the state of Ohio, we're going to put you behind bars for a long time. And then when you get out, we're going to ship you back to whatever country you came from. Because you shouldn't use our goodwill to your own advantage here and try to steal the American dream from the American taxpayers. That money could stay in individuals' pockets. They could be provided for their own family. They could make it more affordable for them to live on their own if the government was taxing them less, so they didn't have to provide these type of benefits to individuals who didn't provide any resources to the community and came here under open border policy under the Biden administration, getting special status that made it where they were eligible for public assistance instantaneously.
Okay, very good, very good. Let me, if you got a comment there, Brian?
Yeah, I'm just shaking my head when I'm listening to Representative Williams, talking about this fraud and abuse. Representative Williams, is there any idea how many state dollars we're talking about, versus federal dollars?
Well, that's a good question. We don't know yet what the estimates are. A lot of these programs are federal based, but we also have a lot of state dollars as well. If you look at the last two budget cycles, the governor has been adamant on expanding these child care and daycare programs. And I've been in opposition to it. Even in leadership, I don't think that we should be expanding this. I'll give you some examples. We increased the income eligibility for free child care here in the state of Ohio. On top of that, we created a voucher program for individuals that were above the low income threshold to be able to get a voucher to take their kid to a private daycare facility. In addition to that, we created a TRICARE system, which I actually support, because 1/3 of the money is paid by the employer, another third is paid by the employee, and the other third is paid by the state of Ohio. That's the type of system that I can get behind. But then we even expanded this home-based daycare. And this is where the abuse is coming in. We've got evidence of this already. DCY, we've had conversations about this. So imagine two sisters. Each one of them have 6 kids. Each one of them registers their home as a home daycare. So they're not these LLCs that you're seeing people go to. It's an individual person's home. Imagine if one sister watches her sister's 6 kids, and vice versa. The other sister on paper watches your 6 kids. And you're both paid by the state of Ohio to essentially watch your sister's kids. But then on a daily reality, you're just sitting at home watching your own kids. And we're paying you to do so. That's a reality that we've proven has existed here in the state of Ohio. And we need to get rid of that. Same thing when it comes to these daycare centers. We're seeing daycares that in real time, one, they're not opening doors to American citizens. Only if you're a member of the Somali community can you enroll your children in these daycare facilities. They turn you away right at the door if you're not a Somalian. We've seen proof of that. Even though they have signed on the anti-discrimination policies that should revoke their licenses. 2, a lot of these places, the workers don't even speak English. So how are you getting these kids prepared to go into kindergarten if you're only speaking to them in a foreign language? And 3, we have multiple occurrences of where a daycare center has their employees, let's say it's 2 to 3 women, and only their children are the children attending the daycare and being paid by the state of Ohio to watch your own children. The daycare provider will pay a minimum wage so they maintain their eligibility for free child care, and then they get paid to watch their own children on the state tax dollar.
I just have another question. Then, what is the role of government? Is the role of government to provide daycare center? Should we? What's the total amount of money that the state of Ohio was paying for child care services?
Yeah, I don't know what that total amount is. I know the increase that we had in the budget was over $100 million that we put towards child care in the last 2 budgets. And that's money that could go towards a lot of things. We have a lot of our colleagues calling for increased funding for public schools. We have a petition out here to get rid of property taxes on the local level. That's going to cost upwards of $20+ billion to local governments. There's plenty of things we could be spending that money on instead of paying people to watch their own children.
I agree with that 100%. I want to show you something on that first video that I just played. This right here, I'm just going to play this little clip.
It's a daycare center owned by Somalians and stuff like that.
Have you ever seen any kids in this place?
Now, this is Columbus, okay? This is not Minnesota. This is Mutt Racker. He's just a YouTuber, and he's going out to these locations. So this is Columbus, Ohio.
He's here?
No, not that I know of. I just seen it, the building itself. I've never seen nobody come out the building or go in the building.
Now, when you look at, Josh, when you look at the report that the state put out, and this is where, it gets a little dicey. I don't quite understand it. But you'll look at a report, let's say, for that particular daycare center, and they're going to say that they've made multiple trips there. They filled out the paperwork. They've got, what the problems were. Maybe the food utensils weren't clean or something. They get written up some little stuff. But these people live directly across from that particular daycare, and they said they have never seen anybody go inside. So can we trust these state reports? I know it's a hypothetical question, but I would say as a citizen, I don't know if I trust them.
Well, in relation to that particular facility and that particular video, I have seen the unedited version, and I will push back a little bit on that particular example. Because if you watch the entire extended version, those two individuals do say that at that daycare provider, they use the back door. And therefore, I've never seen anybody go in or out, but I do know that they use the back door. Now, that's an easy workaround. But, you know, investigators have gone on. And I want to also say, sometimes when they go out to investigate, they're investigating safety and security of children, and that's it. So they'll go in and look for dirty utensils, or whether or not children are confined, or whether or not there's easy access during a fire. But then there's other audits where they actually go through the books and look at the checks that were cut, and they look at the attendance records. And based on those investigations in the past, what Ohio has done now is we've implemented a PIN system. So, you know, DoorDash has done this now. Whenever I want to order food, my DoorDash driver drops off the food and he says, "Do you have a PIN?" Because there were so many reports, you know, of drivers eating the food instead of dropping it off. So I have to give that guy in real time my PIN. Well, what we found in Ohio, once we made PINs required, is that daycare providers were asking parents for their PIN so they could PIN in the child when the child wasn't even present. A photo has to be taken of the individual who pins in the child. Well, we saw occasions where the woman that was pinning in a child, dropping them off, essentially had on a full face covering. And therefore, you couldn't know if that was a daycare worker or a parent dropping off a child. There's no picture of the minor child. And DCY sent out a letter to families in the state of Ohio saying, "Hey, we're getting reports that daycare providers are asking for these pins. If you have provided your PIN to your daycare provider, you need to ask for a new PIN, or you can lose eligibility." And lo and behold, 7,500 families in the state of Ohio asked for new PINs. That's just an example of how they try to skirt the system even when you provide oversight. So this is the guarantee that I can give you. Later on this month, my office will be introducing legislation that will give the capability of daily oversight of each facility, and including the attendance of children in real time. And I'm not going to disclose the details of that because I already got my Democrat colleagues saying that we're picking on the Somali community. But many of my members are willing to sign on to this legislation, and we're going to push for it to be signed in through the House and signed into law by the governor by the time we break for summer break. That means we got from February to the end of June to get this legislation done. And we're gonna put our pedal to the metal when it comes to this, because our constituents are demanding increased oversight, and out of my office we're going to provide it.
Excellent. Yeah, we do. We definitely need some oversight. We'll get to some of these chat questions in a second. I'll throw it to Jonathan though.
Yeah, I do. I want to focus on the chat questions. I'm conflicted. I'm torn on this because in the lead up to this, thanks again for coming on and joining us, Rep. Williams. This is a really important conversation, and there's a tremendous amount to unpack. I've actually prepared a page. I have a full page of questions that I want to ask Rep. Williams, but I want to defer to the people who are following and entering questions on the chats. Let's focus on them. But before we switch over and focus on the questions that are being submitted online, I want to make the comment that if you follow me on social media, you know that I'm the ex-Wall Street guy who does the follow the money. I have a background in uncovering and unraveling really complex, some pretty dirty schemes to launder and filter money through strange places and put it into the bad guys' pockets. This stuff is unbelievably complex. There is a myriad world of waste, fraud, and abuse that we need to unpack here. And I tip of the hat to Representative Williams for taking this on. That said, I'm going to pause the questions that I have, and Kent or Joe, can you bring back up some of those questions? Let's make sure to get those answered. There we go. Oh, that hits the nail right on the head right there. Let's Doge, Ohio. Let's get back to that whole conversation about Doge, Ohio.
All right, so let's. I'll just throw that over to Josh Williams for a second. Any chances that could become some type of a reality, or actually, your proposal seems to be doing that in a way, correct?
Yeah, I mean, our proposal is going to make it where DCY has real-time access to these child care facilities, but I do think we need a broader DOGE here in the state of Ohio, and that's an example in the letter that we sent to the auditor's office. So the auditor is the chief DOGE officer here in the state of Ohio, essentially. And, Auditor Faber has been doing a great job. I've asked for him to do investigations of government agencies in the past, and his office has done amazing work, but they're limited in their statutory authority. One, they're only able to investigate government agencies and government officials. Two, they only investigate after there are direct complaints to the office. They're not proactive, just going and knocking on doors saying, I want to look at your books. We do need a broader DOGE here in the state of Ohio. And the reason that I support a call for a more widespread auditing of the government and even local municipalities is because we are Republican controlled in the state of Ohio, but within this red state, we have a bunch of blue bubbles. And those blue bubbles tend to have their hands out, asking for more and more tax dollars every single budget cycle, and they want little to no oversight. And I'll give you some examples. So I introduced House Bill 26, which will require cities and counties in the state of Ohio to cooperate with ICE. They would have to honor detention holders from ICE. They would be prohibited from being sanctuary cities and counties where they restrict their employees and agencies from cooperating with ICE. And we had Columbus and Cincinnati mayors come out openly say, we are sanctuary cities and we refuse to comply with this law even if it passes. But they want the money. So part of this bill says we're going to take away 10% of your local government funds. Well, we need to start attaching that conditional funding to everything, including these daycare centers. So I don't think, just like Medicaid, you shouldn't have lifelong Medicaid services. I don't think you should have lifetime child care for free. I think you should be required that if you get these subsidized daycares, child care for a year, and you didn't dig yourself off of the system, that means you're working low-wage jobs, that you should be required to enroll in some of our state-sponsored workforce development programs. Go out and get the marketable skills required to dig yourself out of poverty. That's one way that we can force individuals to dig themselves out of that situation so they don't need more tax dollars. But yeah, I do support a calling for a broader DOGE here in the state of Ohio.
And one of the things
Joe, can I piggyback on that?
Sure, go ahead. Let me get you on here.
All right. So one of the things that I'm very concerned about is the idea that some of these governmental agencies may try to expand their budget in order to, and we've seen it before in similar circumstances, to hire staff in order to do audits. If you're just listening and not watching, I'm air quoting that. And it leads to government expansion rather than more effectively and efficiently using the money that currently exists. And I wonder about that idea, and Rep. Williams, you commented on it, the citizen journalist approach. And could we somehow, now that we have this massive, not just statewide, but actually national focus on this issue, maybe sort of crowdsource awareness of these. And we have some unbelievably spectacular online investigative sleuthing going on. It's unfortunate, just as a side note, that we don't have reliable media. In the past, we had journalists who might investigate these sorts of things, but now they seem to turn a blind eye to it. Could we, well, two things, I guess they're connected questions, Rep. Williams. Could we put the clarion call out for more of this investigative journalism? I think we need to put some guardrails so that we don't end up with people getting hurt, but also put some stop blocks on the potential of expanding government under the auspices of government oversight.
Jonathan, I like the way you think, buddy. I like I said, I encourage this citizen journalism, but part of my proposal is that we're going to eliminate the need for it, not the desire, not the availability, but the need for it by, one, creating a process where DCY can investigate in real time, where you don't need more employees, that you're going to be able to use technology that's available right now to be able to daily audit these facilities without the additional need of more employees. That's the goal. We don't need to do on-site inspections for this increased effort. We can stay with our once a year of being able to look at physical records and physical sites to look for safety and security. But for when it comes to attendance, you're going to see a dynamic way, the first in the nation's way, of being able to provide real oversight in real time. And more details will be forthcoming, but I guarantee DCY will not need a single additional employee. The most that we've talked to them about is additional funds for a transition of their software system and the implementation of AI. We want to be able to know that when you pin in 10 kids and you're showing records that they're on site right now, that we can check in real time if 10 kids are present. And we're going to have that capability in 2026. If the legislation that I'm proposing later on this month will be signed into law, we'll have that capability, and we won't need the increased efforts from private citizens. But I've also brainstormed the idea of the government working with private investigators to look at this and look at some of the federal programs where when there's a whistleblower and we are able to go and collect money through fines and other mechanisms, that the whistleblower gets a portion. I mean, think about that. If we had that type of oversight where, if you properly investigated something the government wasn't aware of and we were able to recover tens of millions of dollars of fraud, waste, and abuse, that maybe you could get a portion of it for your efforts. That's something that I would definitely be open to exploring in the state of Ohio.
Yeah, that's a great idea. That is a good idea. You got to create some kind of an incentive there. One of the things that I see a lot on these chats is about transparency. Now, I want to just put something forth because I was digging up a few numbers here. I was looking at 2025 because I wanted to see how much auditing took place in 2025, because this stuff's been going on, we know, for a decade or 2 decades. And the problem is it's just coming to head now because a 23-year-old kid, Nick Shirley, grabs a camera, his cell phone, he goes out there, he starts knocking on these daycare centers, he uncovers $110 million of fraud, and everybody goes nuts. And it's like, well, wait a minute. We've got high-paid auditors with huge staffs, and nobody sees anything. So that's the problem I'm seeing with all this. But in 2025, there were 124 public referrals. 124 public referrals. It doesn't even mention that, the system itself uncovered anything. These were just people calling in saying, I see a problem, do something. Now, they closed down 12 daycare centers in 2025. Now, here's where transparency can come in. We don't know how long they were closed down. You can't get this information anywhere. You only find this information on some reports, either from Governor DeWine or from the DCY, and they're very vague. They just say 12 facilities were shut down. It could have been shut down for an hour. It could have been shut down all year. Who knows? But I think that's important information. Also, there were 61 daycare centers that were paid too much money. And again, that's all they say. 61, we paid 61 of them too much money. Now, keep in mind, this is only from the 124 that the people said there were problems with. So they didn't look at all of them. They didn't look at all 5,200. This is from the 124 that people reported on. And they said, 61 of them are getting too much money. But again, they don't say how much is too much money. And I think that's a problem. But before I get an answer from you, this is my favorite band of all time, so we got to listen to them for a second.
Millions spent, but classrooms bare. Where the children at? Tell me, Mr. Governor, who's accountable for that? While they learning center, can't spell the name right. License near 100, but no kids inside. Millions paid out. Door shut tight, Nick Shirley walks in, brings it all to light. Where the children at?
Where's the children at? That's what we want to know.
Millions spent, but classrooms bare.
And they can't spell learning either.
Tell me, Mr. Governor, who's accountable for that?
Oh, yeah, it's my favorite band. Yeah, where are all the kids at, okay? I mean, this is ridiculous. And I'll tell you what, I saw somebody on X from Ohio. They had an Ohio daycare center, and there were too many digits for the phone number. So they had the phone number plastered on the front of this beat up old brick building, and they had too many digits. It wasn't even a valid phone number to use. So
yeah, Joe, have you heard the comment coming from the governor's office? And I just get appalled when I think about this. And they're saying from the governor's office that this fraud, waste, and abuse is just the cost of doing business. It's just beyond the pale of why they have that kind of attitude, and why would the citizens just put up with that?
Yeah, I don't think we'll get to put up with it too much longer. That's for sure.
Yeah, we got a speeding ticket that's picked up on radar cameras in Willoughby Hills, and automatically we're guilty and we have to pay the fine. But they're taking millions, if not billions, of dollars from the taxpayers, and well, we can't do anything about it because they're following the rules and regulations we have. It doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense. So is that the cost of just doing business, the fraud, Josh?
Absolutely not. That's not the cost of doing business. That's the cost of a lack of accountability and responsibility by government, and not prosecuting when we should. I'll give you an example. Like when I talk to DCY about some of these child care facilities that were shut down, the question becomes whether or not we can prove fraud, or whether it was a mistaken oversight when you counted 100 kids and only 10 were in attendance. I would say that that's fraud. They say it's hard under state law currently to prove that the purpose of the attendance irregularities was to commit fraud. So we're going to be looking at changing what's known as mens rea, the mental state required to prove fraud, from a purposeful to a knowledge requirement, reducing the mental state, the mens rea that's required. Two, when we look at these pens, think about this for a second. You have a parent that you sent a letter to saying, hey, if you gave your pen to your daycare provider so they could check your kid in when you weren't present, please ask for a new pen. How about we have a tougher letter that says, hey, if you gave your pen to your daycare provider to check your child in while you weren't present, you are complicit in fraud and can be charged as the principal offender. Well, that's current Ohio law. I'm a defense attorney by trade. I know what the statutes are in the state of Ohio. I know how to prosecute individuals here. I know what charges should be given. Just because it's a parent of a child receiving assistance doesn't mean you don't treat them as though they are one arm of a criminal enterprise. And that's what we're seeing in Columbus. It is a very consolidated group of individuals. It is a community that is shrouded by a cone of silence. And they look at the American taxpayer as a worthy victim that they can exploit so they can send money back home to take care of their families and the organizations, the terrorist organizations that they support. We've seen that. We've seen the remittances that go back to Somalia and the percentage of their GDP that comes from America. We see the percentage of these Somali communities that are on public assistance. Let's be clear. You should not be on public assistance if you are not a U.S. citizen, period. You should not be coming to the United States if you are going to be a ward of the state, period. If you have a community here that can represent you, even if you're coming from a war-torn country, it should be part of that type of philanthropy that provides for you when you come here, and only to the capacity that they can provide should we allow individuals in for limited time. This is not going to be the welfare state for the rest of the world. We went from, in Ohio, having sanctuary cities to having subsidized cities, where the rest of the state of Ohio is subsidizing the bad policies of these Democrat-controlled metropolitan areas.
No, very good. All right, I'm going to go Jonathan in a minute, but George Satari, I think, is out there. George, you out there?
Yes, sir.
Did you?
Yes.
Did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, well, my comment is, why the hell is the federal government funding daycare, housing, food, medical care? We talk about Mondami in New York. We've basically become a socialist nation. There's nothing that the government doesn't regulate, touch, subsidize, pay. Whatever happened to less government and more individual responsibility? This is ridiculous. This debt of 38 trillion is going to just keep growing and growing, and it's ultimately going to enslave my children and my grandchildren. I don't really care that much about myself because I, as a Christian, I am always free, whether I'm sitting in the deepest gulag in Siberia or just being nickel and dime to death by bureaucrats. But this has to stop somewhere. And Josh, I hope if you go to Congress, the goal will be to cut not only regulations, but expenses. Donald Trump is doing a poor job, plain and simple, in cutting this. He's cut the workforce in Washington, but the budget has only decreased insignificantly relative to the decrease in the workforce because most of it's caught up in entitlements, such as these BS programs of housing, child care, everything. You know, I need a bologna sandwich. Could I get a check from the government? I mean, come on. What's all this about?
George joins us on the phone. And George also has a radio show every Monday night called Monday Night Roundtable, and that's on 12:20 a.m. here in Cleveland. And
yeah, Representative Williams, he's been on our show a few times.
Okay, great. Well, but for people that are just watching, so they know it as well. But go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, George, it's good to hear from you, buddy. I absolutely agree. The number one agenda that I have when I get to Congress is to reform our welfare state. I think I'm the perfect candidate to do that because I'm an example of how you overcome being on public assistance and these type of government subsidies that try to keep you in perpetual poverty by making the income requirements where you can't dig yourself out and make you reliant on these subsidies moving forward. So then, every 4 years they can count on your vote because they're going to lie and say the racist Republicans are going to take away your livelihood by taking away these subsidies. That's why the number one goal for me is to do these type of reforms. We did it in Ohio. Here's an example. We did it in Ohio in the budget. So if you look at House Bill 96, our budget this year, in Medicaid, we're the first state to ask the federal government for a Medicaid waiver to require workforce development training. That's an amendment that came out of my office. We said we're following in the footsteps of President Trump, asking for a work requirement of 20 hours a month or 20 hours a week in order for you to maintain your Medicaid benefits. But we added an additional caveat that we're asking the Department of Medicaid. And that is if an individual is on Medicaid for 12 consecutive months and they do not dig themselves off the system, we're going to require them not only to work 20 hours, but go to school in one of our workforce development programs for 20 hours a week in order to get the marketable skills to dig themselves out of poverty. We're going to force you to be able to get the skills necessary to go out and demand a higher wage so you can get off of the system. Why? I did it. And I'm not saying just because I did it, everybody else can do it, but I'm disabled. I'm 50% disabled since my injury. And when I hit college, the government made me work 20 hours a week in order to keep my disability going. So I worked 20 hours. I went to school full time. I was raising a family. I was coaching and mentoring in my community all at the same time. And I was able to use that as an avenue to dig myself out of poverty as I earned my college degrees. And in just 5 years, I earned 3 college degrees, including my Juris Doctorate, and went on to be a lawyer and a professor and now a state representative in majority whip and House leadership, all because government got the hell out of the way and let me pursue the American dream through education. We're going to require that soon in Medicaid if the federal government approves our Medicaid waiver. I want to do it for every subsidy program where the program is short term. It is not a safety net, but a trampoline, where if you fall to the lowest point you've ever been in your life, you hit that government assistance and bounce back higher than you've ever been. That's the goal, is to revamp these programs, and we will be able to see that the more people we get off of the system and prevent their family, their children or grandchildren from falling onto the system is how we save money long term. And I agree. I would have liked to see more budget cuts in the federal budget last time. But what we saw was a concerted effort to increase the gross domestic product to be able to pay down the debt over time. And we've been able to do that through our increased production and our tariff revenues that we've been able to generate under the leadership of President Trump.
Right. And just as a side note, yeah, the training needs to come along sooner rather than later, because if we are bringing back all these jobs, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's shipbuilding, whether it's making more airplanes for the military, welding, plumbing, carpentry, these skills they pay very well. And people could make 60, 80, 100 with overtime plus benefits, $150,000 a year. So these people sitting on their couches in their mother's basement really need to get kicked hard to get off and get productive and do some things for the republic.
I'm going to tell you how bad this gets. I'm going to use the daycare example to show you how bad this gets in the state of Ohio. So we have evidence of individuals that are working at daycare providers receiving minimum wage. That makes it where they're eligible for free Medicaid, SNAP benefits, Section 8 housing, cash assistance, WIC, and free childcare. And then their children are the ones attending the childcare center. So because you work at the childcare center making minimum wage in these Somali daycares, you are eligible for these subsidies, and as a result, we got to pay for your 6 kids then to be in the child care with you. That may not technically be fraud, but it definitely is abuse of the system, and we have to tighten up real soon on how these things are created and the eligibility requirements for people that are working there. And I understand the argument was, if we have, a woman that works in a child care facility and she's a single mother with 1 kid, she should be able to take her child to that daycare facility. I get that. But when we start talking about 5 and 6 children by the same woman, we're starting to have a problem of where we're essentially just paying this woman to watch her own children, and there's no progress that is going to happen for that entire family unit.
Right.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I might add one thing, but some of these Somalian type women and Muslim women and stuff have a lot of kids. So basically, if they've got 6 kids, and I don't know if they could all be in daycare at the same time, though. But who knows? Jonathan, any thoughts, man?
Yeah, well, I can tell already we're going to run out of time. An hour goes fast when we're in an important subject that's as dense as this one. I'm going to suggest that everybody out there go and find Representative Josh Williams on social media. I started following him on X and Facebook a couple of years ago. Before we sign off, Representative Williams, as I mentioned before the show started, you're welcome to stay on as Chris Long joins us for the conversation. We're going to continue talking about this subject, but I want to point out just the great questions and comments that have scrolled through here. I wish we had more time, and I do want to make a focus of that. If you're on social media following this podcast, find Representative Williams and get answers to your questions. I know we're not going to hit them all. I want to kind of throw a potential curveball at you. There's a lot of talk about the presumed voting habits of the Somali community. It's assumed that, and I think there's good statistical evidence behind it, that many of these immigrant communities vote heavily Democrat. They vote heavily left, especially if they're sort of brought into a socialist sort of a climate. But there's another component that really concerns me, and I haven't heard much about it yet, and that has to do with political donations. I'd like to see, and I know out there in our listening audience, we've got some cyber sleuths. They're going to find answers to this. I'd love to see the general campaign contribution patterns of the Somali community, because if we find something that indicates heavy flow of money through the Somali community, receiving all of this heavy subsidized funding from state and federal government, and then they're funding the very candidates and the politicians who are bringing about these policies that allow this stuff, that starts to get into the argument of it's basically smurfing and campaign finance abuse, potentially. Do you know anything about that, or is that on your radar yet, Representative Williams?
Jonathan, great question. I can let a little bit out of the bag that members of my caucus has referred at least one Democrat member in the House of Representatives in Ohio to the Secretary of State for irregularities in their campaign finance reports. with a substantial number of daycares provided donations to them. Individuals that have been, at least their daycares have been shut down previously because of waste, fraud, and abuse, donating to them. And we've also seen a lot of irregularities when it comes to donations, large donations that are marked as John Doe or best efforts when it comes to jobs and addresses for those individuals. We are looking at it because essentially this is becoming a slush fund where the taxpayer dollars are going to these entities. That money's making its way right back into the coffers of their candidates. And you know, we do have 2 Somali members that are the first ones serving in the Ohio General Assembly, one of which receives a large amount of donations into his campaign from these individuals. So there has been references made, and that's up to the Secretary of State to investigate that. But we have looked at the finance reports for individuals, not only Democrats but Republicans, here in the state of Ohio, whether or not, you know, this waste, fraud, and abuse is making its way into their coffers. And it gets wider than just the child care facilities. I'll take a second to tell you exactly how complicated this is because we're running out of time. What we know is that in this particular community, it's not traditional for a woman to have 6 children outside of wedlock. And we know within this community, it is part of their tradition to have multiple wives. But in Ohio and in the United States, you can't have multiple wives. So on paper, you have 1 wife, and then there's going to be 3 single women with 6 children in the community that's associated with you. And because they are single women with 6 children, they're going to be getting public assistance. As a result, we are seeing daycare centers where those individuals are only watching their children. Then we will see one of those individuals be paid by the state of Ohio to watch a grandmother who some doctor said has a medical condition that's either true or false. So they're getting paid to be home health aides for their own family member in the same house that they live in, and while their children are going to daycare. Then another family member will own a transportation company and be the one transporting grandmother to and from doctor's appointments where Medicaid has no records of being paid or paying out for a dentist or physical therapy or, you know, a regular general practitioner's visit that day, but yet there's transportation records. These are all things we've actively referred up for investigation. It is multi-department, it is multifaceted, and I can say that it reeks of organized crime. And we have a very strong engaging of a pattern in corrupt activity statute, which is our RICO statute here in the state of Ohio, a very strong statute that I have actively had cases where people were charged with this type of statute. And it needs to be used more often on the state level. And here's the problem that we have, is that we have no state police and we have no state prosecutor. We have an attorney general, but he has very limited jurisdiction. The jurisdiction falls on the county prosecutor. So do you think Franklin County is going to prosecute these individuals for waste, fraud, and abuse when we watch the mayor get tens of thousands of dollars donated by these daycare providers? The same group that were found to have waste, fraud, and abuse when it came to housing programs under the Biden administration during COVID came to a Somali organization to do that in Columbus. They were audited and determined to have so much irregularities the organization shut down. But yet they donated money to the mayor who was refusing to let ICE come into that same community. So it gets very deep, it's multi-layered, and we need to have a full investigation. And I'm telling you guys, this is just the tip of the iceberg here in the state of Ohio, and expect more to come.
Let me just throw a comment in myself here real quick. We just got a couple minutes, but you know, you're talking about here's something that perplexes me. The Somalians, for example, they can't read, write, not very well. They're not educated. Okay, how did they set up all these daycare centers? I mean, obviously they don't know how to do the paperwork. They couldn't fill out the paperwork. So somebody's doing it for them, and to me that just seems like massive fraud. And maybe we can get to that. I'm going to throw it over Brian. Brian, do you have any thoughts you want to ask?
Yeah, just my final thought is I'd probably shut the whole thing down. If we cannot ensure that the money is being spent properly, so what's the purpose? we're going to spend more money to try to fight all of this fraud, waste, and abuse. And I don't think anything's going to change when I hear Governor DeWine's office, say those things. They're not interested in fixing the problem.
Yeah.
And it's just totally unacceptable for the average citizen.
Yeah. Yeah. Why should we be paying all these taxes, Josh, when all this corruption is going on? That's what a lot of people are saying.
Yeah, I mean, there's potential corruption. What I can say, this is where I'm confident in my role as a legislator and someone that provides tremendous amount of oversight and works my butt off for my constituents in the state of Ohio. I take my role as a legislator and a member of leadership very serious. I have almost 80 bills already introduced in the last year out of my office, the most out of any legislator in Ohio's history. I stopped practicing law. I stopped teaching to focus full time on this. I put in tremendous hours, and there's going to be oversight that comes, and we come up with creative ways of providing oversight, because there is a lot of people that are worthy in our community that are trying hard, that we know on a daily basis, that are trying to go out and work, and they can't afford childcare on their own, and they can't afford housing, but they're trying. I was that person, disabled, trying to dig myself out of a situation, and I was able to use Social Security disability and workers' compensation as a pathway to dig myself out of poverty and off the system, and now pay my taxes to help the person that's left behind. So long as they are making a concerted effort to dig themselves out of that situation, I'm supportive. But the problems that I have here is there should not be any eligibility for a single person that is not a U.S. citizen, period, in any one of these subsidized programs at all. If you can't afford to live in America, don't come here. If your family's not going to support you, if anybody else is not going to support you, you are not going to be a ward of the state here in the state of Ohio. We're going to create better oversight. We're going to create better income guidelines and eligibility, making sure that only Ohioans, only American citizens that reside in the state of Ohio are eligible for these programs. That's the first step. The second step is when you are caught committing wrong in the state of Ohio, that we put you behind bars for a very long time. When we talk to Ohio citizens, if you're going to deal drugs, if you're going to commit violent crime, if you're going to steal from your local Walmart, we threaten you with substantial prison time. But here in Ohio, we only have increased penalties for Medicaid fraud. We do not have increased penalties for other fraud when the source of the funds is government dollars. We're going to introduce that later on this month. When you are convicted of fraud and the underlying source of funds are tax dollars, we're looking to put you behind bars for decades. And then if you are an illegal immigrant, we're shipping you out. If you are a legal resident, refugee, any other protected status, we're stripping it from you and we're shipping you back to whatever shithole you came from. And if you are an American citizen and you committed fraud by coming to the country with the intention to defraud the public, we will denaturalize you and send you back to wherever you came from.
That's awesome.
I'm ready to move to Northwest Ohio so I can vote for you.
Yeah. So you're sounding like more and more like somebody who's running for Congress. Very good. Excellent. Excellent. George, you want to wrap it up with Josh tonight? Do you have anything you want to say?
Yeah. One final thing. I had a conversation with Chris Long about the implications for the Ohio elections in 2026. Rightly or wrongly, the Republicans are going to look like a bunch of inept crazy cops because, let's face it, we've had all the top offices and the people relate auditor, attorney general, treasurer as these kind of functions and oversight for these kind of problems. And this has probably been going on, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years. I don't want to say 5 years. Let's say 3 years. It doesn't matter. The top offices have been occupied by Republicans. And we may take a beating in 2026 for this, whereas in Minnesota, Governor Walz will probably win in a landslide because they like this, the fraudulent community. So we'll see.
That is just to end with that, Josh. That's been a thought I've had, too. It's like we talk about the fraud going on with the daycare centers and everything, but my gosh, when does the governor, when does the state auditor, when do these guys ever have to accept some of the blame? I mean, they're guilty too, right?
Well, what I can say is the state auditor only has the authority to investigate government agencies and government officials for waste, fraud, and abuse. This is an individual program that's run through the executive branch. The governor, it falls on his lap. That these are programs ran by executive agencies. And, you know, we've known there's been suspicion for years, and that's why we made a concerted effort to restructure government. We took the power away from Ohio Job and Family Services and put it in the hands of a executive branch department to run that specifically. Now Ohio Jobs and Family Services only determines eligibility at the county level. Now we have the state department that's doing it. And I mean, I have to give credit to DCY. They've made concerted efforts in the 2 years they've been in existence to come up with solutions. But I'll give you an example. When they talked about these pins, that they said, oh, we made it where you got to have these daily pins. And when we found out that daycare providers were asking for these pins in advance, we wrote this letter and we reset 7,500 pins. When I talked to the director, I said, well, why can't we make it daily or weekly pins? Why can't we in real time make sure that there's less waste, fraud, and abuse by using daily and weekly pins? And then I said, I'll give you another example. Why are we doing better surveillance of these facilities? And I'm not going to give away the legislation we're going to be introducing. I said, but with the technology we have, there's absolute ways to give 24-hour surveillance on these facilities. So we can see how many people are walking in the front door and back door and side door and climbing through the roof. We can check and see if there's even enough people in the building to count for the number of children that are pinned in attendance. And they said, that is a great idea. We would support that legislation if it was introduced. And I said, you know, I'm game. And I started getting it drafted. And we're going to introduce it right when we get back in session. But there's additional things. We're going to introduce legislation to try to take away eligibility of non-citizens from all of these programs. We're going to introduce that in the spring. We're going to introduce every measure possible. It takes good Republicans, not just at our statewide elected, but at our state representative, state senator positions. It takes good individuals at our local job and family services, and it takes a good governor. And that's why I am confident that Vivek Ramaswamy will come in. And I mean, he was one of the pioneers of Doge. That's the guy we need at the governor's office, instead of me having to overturn vetoes from a governor that thinks boys should be able to cut off their genitalia at the age of 12. I shouldn't have to veto a governor for that. I shouldn't have to veto the governor on boys playing in girls' sports. We shouldn't have to overturn bad policy by the executive. And that's why I'm supporting Vivek Ramaswamy for governor, and I'm looking forward to his VP pick later on next week.
Yeah, that's coming up. Well, thank you very much, Josh.
His lieutenant governor pick, not VP, his lieutenant governor pick.
Yeah, lieutenant governor pick coming up.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, thank you. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to the future of Ohio. I can tell you that we have a bright Republican Party with some very young conservatives on the uptick in Ohio. You see it with Vivek. You see it with some of our statewide candidates. You see it with some of our smart legislators. Oh my God, do we have some smart young legislators in the House of Representatives that I serve with. I think Ohio is in good hands, but we got to tighten the ship. We got to tighten the belt. And as constituents, you got to hold our feet to the damn fire. If I tell you I'm going to bring solutions and I don't deliver, you need to hold my feet to the fire.
There you go. I like it. Yep. All right. Well, thanks again. God bless you. God bless your efforts, too, going for a Congress. You know, get Captor out of that seat, will you?
Yes.
You've been keeping it warm for 4 decades. That's too long. We didn't even have a seat. All right. We got Chris Long coming up with us here in just a minute. Chris, I see you out there. Hang on a second. Kent, you're with me, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's talk it up a little bit about all
right,
what we need to talk about. Go ahead.
Make sure to, if you're in the chat, thanks to everybody in the chat, especially in Rumble, go down to the bottom of the chat with the $sign to do a Rumble rant. We will definitely read those off. And you can also send a gift, what happened last week, which we appreciate. And I see a couple people from receiving those gifts in the chat tonight. Also on Facebook, in the chat, there is a little star icon. If you want to support us, click on that star and you can send us stars to support us and then also if you go to ohiopoliticalnews.com, you can go into the donation button and support us that way. We really appreciate that. We appreciate everybody watching us tonight. But also, you can also support us. It does cost money. I know Brian's going to be doing a live stream. We're going to be doing a lot of live streaming in January and throughout the year of 2026 with the election coming up. So I know Joe's going to be busy with a lot of live streaming, and we'll be doing a lot of work that way too. But appreciate any kind of support. Also, make sure to follow us on all those different platforms. We are on Rumble, X, YouTube, Facebook, Substack. Just support us, follow us, and we appreciate all the support. Thanks.
And who was it that gave us the donation last week? We got a nice donation last week.
Oh, it was Ruth, I believe. There was a lady. I believe she got one. Yeah, I just got her first name. I believe it was Ruth, and we appreciate your support immensely. And we also had one more on Facebook. I can't remember the name, but thank you to both. The support is, it does help, and it doesn't take much. So just whatever you can do, we really appreciate it.
You betcha.
Yeah, don't forget. Cut over here so I can show my mug. Don't forget our
and
we've got
definitely and
stop in and get your swag. I happen to have mine with my mug shot on it.
The mug
I've got
shot,
my
yeah.
Jonathan mug shot. So you can pick up some
go
swag
to
there.
Ohio Political News /shop for your mug or any other merch. Thanks, Jonathan.
The mug shot. The good old mug
The
shot.
mug shot.
We got to get Chris Long a mug shot. We got to get you a mug. We never did. How you doing?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Happy New Year.
That's right. 2026. Hard to believe. Hard to believe it's here already.
That's right. Good evening and Happy New Year to you, Joe, and the whole crew.
Well, you're with the Ohio Christian Alliance. I mean, it's a great organization. And you've always got a lot to say. And what is it that you want to expound on tonight? I think it has to do with what we were just talking with State Rep Josh Williams about, right?
Well, that's right. So Josh Williams did a good job. He's talking about from the legislators' perspective of what they're going to do in introducing legislation. I thought that George Satari brought up some great points in some of the chat, questions as well. Folks are really concerned about this, really serious about it. And so, by the way, I want to say out of the gate, 2026 for the political landscape of the Republican Party in Ohio, I wouldn't put a big optimism on that right now. That does not to say that things couldn't turn around, but right now things look very foreboding for Republicans going into 2026. And the reason for that is that people are mad at both parties right now. They really don't care about the parties. They are mad, period, and we're going to get to that in a minute. And George alluded to it, and that is that nothing ever gets done. Nothing gets changed. Nobody goes to jail. Nobody gets charged. I mean, look, the Venezuela thing that moved the Somalian fraud off the front page and off the Twitter feed and X feed and Facebook feed, and it's all about Venezuela. I don't live in Venezuela. I live in Ohio. I live, in the Northeast Ohio area. I care about what's happening in America. And MAGA right now is more than a little teed off, even with the president. Oh, great. Okay, fine. That was a great extradition of, a criminal who was overseeing the state of Venezuela. I'm all for that, except that MAGA is very upset right now that the president isn't focusing on domestic policy. And that's where you and I and everyone on this feed right now lives. Our dollar lost 18% of its value from 2020 to 2023, and from 2018 to 2023, it lost 21% of its value. Let me give that to you in numbers.
Oh, what happened?
All right, so Chris froze. Is it okay to interject while we work on the tech issue there?
We
Yeah,
lost
but one
him.
second. Ken, did you have something to say?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank Michelle for Ohio for the dollar Rumble rant. We want to just mention that chat. So just
Oh yeah,
her,
thank you,
chat.
Michelle.
So thank you
anybody
for
who
the
gives us
Rumble rant,
a Rumble rant,
we really appreciate that. So yeah,
Yeah.
just checking out that website. So
Okay.
she's
Thank you.
running
that is greatly
for
appreciated.
U.S. Senate.
That is greatly
thank you,
appreciated,
Michelle.
and it does. It takes money for us to keep this show running. Kent and Joe primarily are doing a spectacular job of getting the message out and creating this platform for us to get news and information out to Ohio. If you haven't caught on by now, we need to find things like this that bypass legacy mainstream media. So just to sort of round out the conversation that we just had with Representative Williams, you can catch a show with Bob France. Bob France has a program, Strictly Speaking Unfiltered. You can find it mostly on Rumble, but on Friday, there's an hour-long conversation with Representative Williams on this subject. You can get more answers there. But here's the thing that I wanted to interject while Chris works on getting back online and rejoining us. Let me know when he's back with us. But I want to ask everybody to please cut it out. Let's stop using the terms both parties and Republican control in Columbus. I've been making the argument for years successfully that party raiding happened. We call it Rhino, we call it Trans Democrat, we use all sorts of funny terminology, but it did happen. We have far left, very liberal Democrats who invaded the Republican Party, and they've done a pretty good job for themselves of promoting very liberal agenda from within the Republican Party. So it's a misnomer, and it's an overstatement to say that we have a Republican supermajority and we have control of all these Republican seats. When I look at the behaviors, actions, and votes and choices made by people like our current Secretary of State and our current governor, in my book, I have a hard time justifying the statement that that's a Republican. If we can get ourselves to the point where we actually have strong, solid Republicans, and again, that goes back to the argument. On the far left, we see very vocal advocates for leftist policy. We see no such thing on the right. We see, at best, typically, outside of conversations like the one we just had with Representative Williams, it's very rare to find real Republicans banging the gavel and pounding the podium for conservative values. We don't have that. We have squishy left to far left within the Republican Party. We need to get rid of it. And once again, I'm going to advocate for visiting the website ohioprecinctstrategy.org. There's also a national website, precinctstrategy.com. It encourages people, all of us, more of us, as many as possible, to get involved at the local level to reinstill traditional American values and conservative values within the Republican Party. That's the way we win. That's the way MAGA gets what we want.
All right, I think Chris is here to join us again. Hey, Chris, can you turn your cell phone sideways so we'll get more of an image from you? There we go.
I just want to also, one more thank you to Michelle for Ohio for another Rumble rant. We will be checking out the go through. I've been looking at the plan, and Michelle, if we want to get you on, please write to Joe at ohiopoliticalnews.com. But thank you for the Rumble rant.
Yeah, that's a good point. So if somebody wants to come on the show or has some ideas or has some insider information, occasionally somebody will share something with me, it's Joe at ohiopoliticalnews.com. Just send me an email, okay? And if you want to come on the show and you got something that you want to talk about that's earth-shattering, sure, I'd love to join you. Okay, send me an email, Michelle. Send me an email, Joe at ohiopoliticalnews.com. All right, Chris, howdy. Now you were interrupted there, and you were telling us how the dollar was falling. So
the dollar, yes. Well, the dollar fell. Okay, and so let me give you the numbers on that. In 2020, $40,000. In 2023, you now needed $47,092. It decreased in value by 18%. If you go back to 2018 to 2023, it decreased by 21%. That means you would need $48,514. Now, this is not new to anyone that's listening in. In other words, the dollar in your pocket is not what it was just a few years ago. Wages have not increased, but taxes have, and this program has talked about the real estate taxes, but 40 to 50% of our income is taxed. Then when you have that going on where the value of your dollar has diminished so much because of outrageous government spending, this puts, the everyday citizen in a terrible position. Then you throw on this fraud that has been discovered, not just in Minneapolis, but it's in Ohio. And by the way, he said alleged. I know, the state representative. Believe me, it's real. I talked to the state auditor. I talked to him on New Year's Eve. Both he and the state treasurer picked up their phone immediately when I called. Now, you know why that was? Because they know that when I'm calling at times like this, these are critical times. This issue, mark my word, will be a huge issue all this year. Now, the Republicans could get to the bottom of this. If they don't, the feds will be descending on Ohio. So I know that the state representative said, well, we don't have a state police force, like they have the state highway patrol, and, we're kind of, our hands are tied because of the governor. Listen to me. Governor DeWine's in trouble right now, and his office, because he, just like Governor Walz, has actually approved these payments. The state treasurer, I talked to him on the phone as well. So I asked Robert Sprague, I said, well, Robert, listen, you're going to get some requests from the state auditor. He's going to ask you the detailed account of the checks that have been dispersed to these agencies, largely found in Franklin County, by the way. And let me give you an example. I know that the representative wants to be careful about the Somalian community, but obviously these people have been pilfering the treasury, both the federal and the state treasuries, with these programs. There's outrageous fraud that's going on. And this isn't because some YouTuber said so. I'm telling you this because state agency, the auditor and others have already told me we're aware of the fraud. What they're doing is tracking it down at this time, all right? So what I'm going with the dollar devaluing in your pocket, and then you see this fraud, and you see the taxation, and then you don't see anybody being held accountable. You don't think that makes people over the top angry? That means that this is going to be a disastrous year politically. So it's not like, oh, hey, look at our great candidate. No, I'm sorry. Vivek Ramaswamy, by the way, is not doing that well. He's got real problems. So we'll see what happens. There is a pathway for him to win this thing. But as it is, there's a lot of problems ahead. Every Republican knows that right now. I've been doing this for a quarter of a century. I didn't come around yesterday and started a YouTube channel. Many of you know that listen to me. So what I'm saying to you this year, and we're going to survey everybody. They're going to be in the voter guide if they respond to the survey and all that kind of thing. We'll have candidate forums and all. But what you are going to be hearing from the Ohio Christian Alliance is the reality of the times. Because one of the things that we're really listening to is the grassroots people. We're a grassroots organization. I want to listen to what people are saying. Let me give you an example. I talked to Beth Lear, State Representative Beth Lear. She said, Chris, you're so right on about this issue. She said, my pastor was yelling at me through text about this issue. It's like, why should I pay my taxes when they're being pilfered away? In other words, we are having difficulty paying our own obligations. But by the way, 2025 was a terrible year. It wasn't the Trump economy. It was the tail end of the Biden economy. Now, I know the president, that's why he put out that email that he's doing all that he can. And he finally came out in a speech about affordability. I wish he had given that speech 2 months ago, going into before the elections of the fall and before the end of the year, because that really was him trying to turn the ship around. And I agree with a lot of what the president's been trying to do. The question remains, will it be enough to turn the tide for the American people that they see positive things happening for them economically before they cast their ballot in November? That's it, bottom line. I really can't take the oh, I love this candidate and I love this guy. No, I'm sorry. We've already had enough of that stuff. And nobody's really interested in it. I'm going to tell you who isn't. The 30s and 20-somethings who are living the reality that they can't buy a home, they can't buy a car, they can barely make their payments. They're working, they're being taxed, but they don't see any future ahead. They just might not show up. Now, and remember, Charlie Kirk's not here to rally them anymore. You know, it's terrible that Charlie's gone. And there's no replacing Charlie Kirk, and he did some fantastic things. And I know the Turning Point USA is out there, but quite honestly, when we watched the AmeriFest gathering, there was a lot of vitriol that was going on there. That whole movement went from a very positive thing with Charlie about, and especially since he really energized his faith in the last few years. When he first started out, he was quite a libertarian, quite honestly, even on the social issues. This is before he became a born-again Christian. In the last few years, he really started talking about faith, about getting married, falling in love, getting married, having children, following your faith. That was his message. What came out of AmeriFest, or what happened after his assassination with the YouTubers, Candace Owens and others, who started putting out conspiracy, suspicion. This is the kind of thing that Turning Point USA turned into. That's not the kind of issues that mobilize people for the vote in 2026. So let's get real here, shall we? Shall we really start having a discussion of what really is happening? So the Somalian fraud with a 23-year-old investigative reporter in Minneapolis, this kid, he did great work, okay? And so in Ohio, we know that the second largest Somalian community, you don't think that these people that practice piracy in their homeland and that have been transported here because of a civil war under the Obama administration, by the way, many of them are illegal. They came over through chain migration, but they're not legalized here. So eventually ICE is already working in Columbus, and they're already starting to deport some of these people. But they've actually gained the system. They have found a way to apply to these government programs through child care. And let's talk about adult health care, because that was one that was brought to me by one of the state officials and said, where we're going to probably see most of the fraud, and I know the representative didn't mention this because he's not aware of it, is home health care. Now, what's that? Let's say that my mom was still living. She died 5 years ago. But if she was still living and she was living in my home, I could apply, and I was helping her to stay in the home rather than going in a nursing home. It's more affordable. I could apply for funds that would, help us support mom's needs. And so that's the elderly. Well, those home health care programs, that is available. And so get this. The applications in Franklin County, that's where Columbus is, has more applications for home health care for that criteria than all the other 87 counties combined. And those applications in Franklin County reside in a very small area in Franklin County. That's where the fraud is. The auditor is on top of it. He is launching a standalone website on Monday to address these issues in response to the letter of the 41 state representatives, but his own work as well. And he said he's going to be making a major announcement about that. The DeWine administration is not going to be able to hide on this anymore. For those who have been around for a while, 2026 may look like 2006. Let me take you back. The Tom Noe coin scandal, remember that? Joe, you were around back then. The Republicans got wiped out. They lost the governor's race, the attorney general's race, the only thing that was left, the auditor, they won. That was Mary Taylor. And they even lost the Ohio House. So, the speaker right now wants to wait till February to come back to address these things. If he doesn't get that body back right now, okay, and you start playing around, you might be the minority leader next year. Not because people favor the Democrats. It's just that they're so angry they just don't show up to vote. That's the real issue. What I've been watching on the internet is the following. I've watched GWAT veterans, okay? These are men and women who fought in the global war on terror. They came back home, they're working jobs, and they see that half their income goes for taxes, and then that is being frauded away. And this guy said, I wouldn't fight for the country right now. And he's not the only one who said that. I've talked to other GWAT veterans. Men and women who love this country, went out there, put their blood, sweat, and tears on the line, are now do not recognize, because the invasion of immigration, the country that they look at, and they would not be willing to fight for it again. That's how bad it is with the grassroots right now. So I've never seen that in all my political life, in my whole life, that it's become to that critical point of where the electorate is right now in Ohio alone. The Republicans are aware of it. They're the ones in office, for the most part, a majority. And there may be an opportunity, if they address these concerns, and if the president, if his policies kick in, and the big beautiful bill and the tax refunds and more money in your paycheck and no tax on Social Security, no tax on tips, and affordability of cars, and if they could do something about housing, that's another thing entirely, because the big money groups, management groups, are the ones buying up all the available residential properties, keeping it away from young families that want to buy a home, and then turning around like Potter in the movie It's a Wonderful Life and charging them high rents for the same property and keeping it away from them. So if the investment houses can be restricted somewhat from buying up all the residential property, and why are they doing that? Because commercial property tanked. It's one of the biggest things. It's about to collapse. If you go to any downtown area, they're all empty. They all had their investments there. Then they took their money that they had and they went and invested in residential property, keeping it away from everyday Americans and citizens. You don't think the younger electorate knows this? This is where they live.
All right, hang on a second. Let me jump in here. Take a deep breath here. Take a glass of water or something. I got to see if some of the guys are still with me. George, are you still with me?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay. Well, I want to go around the horn here a little bit and get you guys to ask a question or make a comment or something. If you feel so inclined, go ahead.
Yeah, great summary by Chris. First thing, a little bit of housekeeping. Jonathan mentioned, strictly speaking, with Bob France, his new hours are 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. live, with rebroadcast 10 a.m. to noon. So just as a point of information. Also, Chris will be on Monday Night Roundtable tomorrow, or is that Tuesday? I don't know. It's on Monday Night Roundtable tomorrow, 7 to 9 on 1220 WHKW, 7 to 9 p.m. We'll also have Dakota Sawyer in studio. He's visiting from Michigan. He'll be discussing the Buckeye Media Group that we're trying to put together. Chris, we'd like you to stay in on that conversation tomorrow as well.
Yep.
But you know, getting back to these Somalis and all these people gaming the system, coming to this country, Obama, Biden, everybody else, our founding fathers did not create a national suicide pact. That's what these people are turning it into, whether the state constitution, the federal constitution. We are basically suiciding ourselves, our future generation, my children, my grandchildren, the debt, these people coming over here who have no values, anything close to our Constitution. They're coming from socialist countries. They're coming from all of our countries that are our enemies philosophically, whether Germany, Italy, wherever. They're socialists, they're fascists, they're totalitarians, especially the African countries. Europe is bad. We've become so socialist, it's incredible. The government has layered themselves into every aspect of our life, whether financially, regulatory-wise, you know, the biggest industries, government bureaucrats, hospitals, that's all government. Education, that's all government. Finance, that's all government. Military, obviously, that's all government. That's what we need in our Constitution. So the American people better wake up. We're just going to be putting ourselves into a gilded cage, gulag. As long as we have our porn, our sports, our bear, it's just disgusting.
I hear you, man. I hear you. Let me go over to Brian. Hey, Brian.
Yeah, that was a great summary by George and by Chris. We appreciate that. There's a new player in town. His name is Casey Putsch, that will be announcing that he is running for governor. He's going to be on the May primary as a Republican. And I have met him. He's a brilliant guy. He wants to bring manufacturing, back to the state of Ohio. He's also he's got some ideas and plans for what Chris was talking about, and that's the large investors buying up the homes. So look for Casey Hutch to make a run in the state of Ohio, and it just can't be more of the same. I agree. We need to do something drastic. I've been talking about the representatives, all of our legislators. They swear an oath to follow the Ohio Constitution, and they're not following Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution that's protecting our property and our freedoms and liberties. They've fallen down, all of them, be they Democrats or Republicans. They're just not looking after the average citizen. They're just worried about their donor base or their Somali base.
And speaking of Casey, he is going to be on next Sunday night. So.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So there's somebody in the chat said that they like Casey a lot. All right. So spread the word, because he's going to be on the show next week. We'll talk to him, find out what his platform is and everything. And that should be interesting. Let me get Jonathan in here.
All right. So when it comes to institutional money managers and places like BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, that's my world. That's what the world that I came from. And I've made significant public comment going back to really 2007. I made some statements in opposition to some of the behaviors of Wall Street around BlackRock. So I've got a lot of experience and actually a lot of connections in that world. I've been following it. There's an issue that I did, or a short form episode called Market Minute, on the funding of real estate, residential real estate, by some of these managers. And it's one of the most watched videos that I have across platforms. So apparently that is on the public awareness spectrum. People are paying attention to that, and that's a good thing. But I think most importantly, I want to touch on something that both Chris Long and Brian referenced. Let's start with the knowledge. Let's acknowledge the fact that President Trump doesn't have a political party. We talk in terms of this sort of the Republicans versus the Democrats, and it's a dead-end street. It's a nonsensical argument, and I continue to press this. If we continue to say, well, the Republican got elected, and that's better than the Democrat getting elected, then we will spend another couple of decades sliding into communism. What we need to do is a better job of actually creating and forcing a voice and a vote for we the people. Chris Long has brought up several times during his comments the grassroots. Well, what are the grassroots? Are those people that are actually out there engaged, active in voting? Are they voting in the Republican Party? Because really that's their only option, to have a true political voice in this environment, in this nation right now, is if the MAGA people out there, the America First, the people who are patriotic, if they take a seat at the table. I don't care how much posting anybody does, or tweets or text messages, or ranting and raving and videos and podcasts. We accomplish nothing. We have no power and no voice until we take it. We must do a better job of actually taking power from the Republican Party. Reform it from within, I say. We need to kick out the rhinos. We all know they're there. We know who they are. I run Ohio Rhino Hunters, for heaven's sakes. And there's Rhino Removal Project. There are people within the Republican Party. The Republican Party in Ohio, the first thing to know is it's at half strength. Half of the party is just vacant. There's nobody bothered to run. The other half is a mishmash of far left, uber liberal, progressive Democrats who invaded and took those seats. So this whole idea of like, well, if the Republicans win, oh, okay, yay, it's nonsensical. And Chris is not wrong about the lack of enthusiasm. There are a small handful of people who hold the purse strings and they hold the reins within the Republican Party, and they are holding us back and they're killing us. They're crushing the state and destroying every bit of potential that we have as a state to rebound and recover. If we can invade and take over, not invade, it's ours. It's our birthright. Take over the Republican Party and kick out all those bad actors, and everything will fall in line after. We will control any elected official and all of them. We will control the next endorsement when they go to get reelected. We will control the flow of money into their campaign funding, or a lot of it. We will control the public vote and public sentiment if we can reclaim the Republican Party. It starts in the local level. It impacts and is predominant in the county level. We control the endorsements. That is gold in the political climate. We need to do a better job of getting Donald Trump an actual political party. If we make a MAGA party, and we literally don't have to rename it, we don't have to rebrand, just simply get out there, get active, get involved, and get engaged at the local level, we can reclaim the Republican Party and give it back to we the people. It breaks up the uniparty and gives us a path forward to reconcile and fix all of these issues, quite literally each and every one.
Yeah, very good. Listen,
millions spent, but classrooms bare. Where the children at? Tell me, Mr. Governor, who's accountable for that?
Where are the kids?
While at Learning Center, can't spell the name right. License near 100, but no kids inside. Millions paid out, doors shut tight. Nick Shirley walks in, brings it all to light. Where the children at?
Where are the kids?
Millions spent, but classrooms bare. Where the children at? Tell me, Mr. Governor, who's accountable for that?
That's toe-tapping music, man. That's toe-tapping music. I saw you. You got out of that chair, and you were dancing. I saw it. Hey, all right. Go ahead. It's 2026. What else we got to look forward to?
Well, so I want to just go back to what will happen with this Somalian fraud investigation in Columbus. So there's going to be a big announcement this week by the state auditor. Stay tuned for that. We're going to have him on our program, which is News in Focus, which is a podcast, and also it's broadcast on radio in Columbus. We may go back on the air in the Cleveland area. We're actually going to feature some of the programs like this program and Bob Francis' program, Monday Night Roundtable, We the People Convention, a few other the programs. We're going to send it out to our list. And here's the reason why. You know, Bob France was taken off the air on 1420. And it, by the way, it was for political reasons. And there's a real intrigue behind that. And I talked to Bob. But Bob is continuing with his podcast. We're going to help push that out through our membership list that we're going to be sending out an email, including the links to this program. Because, Joe, you've been doing some great work. And it's always been my privilege to be on this program. And this is a way people are getting information. So, for instance, there is going to be a primary in the gubernatorial race. And as you mentioned, that candidate's coming on this program. So it's not just going to be Vivek Ramaswamy. There's going to be another candidate in the race, and it looks as if he's pretty serious. So there's going to be a primary in the Republican side. And by the way, there's going to be big announcements this week. Not only is Vivek Ramaswamy announcing his running mate, but that means that those who've been kind of vying for it, and it's gotten a little squirrely, to be honest with you. I'm told that several of the people running for other offices were actually hoping to be picked for lieutenant governor choice, okay? And so then they're going to have to be stuck with actually running for the office that they've all told us they're going to be running for. So it's going to get real interesting this week. We'll see. We'll see what happens. So back to, the governor said, well, we don't have much to worry about when it comes to the child care fraud. We're different than Minnesota. We have attendance rather than enrollment, and maybe Representative Williams covered this in his hour with you. But what's interesting about that, they caught themselves in a controversy and actually in actually contradicting themselves, because where they were saying that we're not like Minnesota, we're not enrollment. What's the difference between enrollment and attendance? Well, enrollment, maybe you fill out the paperwork at the beginning of the year. It says we have 200 students, and nobody ever checks on it, and they just send out the payments, right? Attendance is, to his point, where the attendance of it's butts and seats. It's other words by the children that are there, just like we do at the local school, that they get paid per child. Well, that's great, except that a provision was pushed by these child care agencies to be put in the annual budget that did get passed that makes it an enrollment base for here in Ohio. The governor's aware of that. And actually the legislature said, well, wait a second, we need to delay the implementation of moving from attendance to enrollment. So they're really contradicting themselves. And so they're going to have to answer all this as things are going to really heat up this week in Columbus on this issue, and from multiple sources, by the way. And, there's going to be federal, the congressmen are going to get involved. The U.S. Senator Bernie Moreno has weighed in on this. So that means that the Justice Department is going to be looking at it, because those are federal monies and tax dollars coming back to Ohio. And if they're being reckless with it by giving it to these people and fraud is taking place, then we're going to find that out. So this thing is going to grow all year long. It's not going to go away. It's not one and done. It's not going to be like, oh, this was the hot thing this week and it's just going to pass. They know darn well that they have to address this and they have to get to the bottom of it. So, and certainly they're not going to stop in Minnesota, which is going to say also in Ohio, where else is this happening? Because we have the number 2 size Somalian population in the country. So this is absolutely an issue that's not going to go away. We're going to be covering it as an organization. We're going to be following it.
Very good. Well, you can do great work. You guys at that Ohio Christian Alliance do great work. And you're the prez. You're the prez. You're the top dog there. So you do great work, Chris. And really appreciate you coming on the show tonight. So, don't be a stranger. You can come on more often. It's been a while. But it's always good to hear from you. It's always good to hear from you.
I'll be on with George Satari, as he mentioned, tomorrow on the Monday Night Roundtable. We'll have more information and update for you, as we're going to be talking to officials during the day tomorrow. So we'll have a brand new update for you. So don't miss that tomorrow night at 7. And that's on 12:20 a.m. on the Monday Night Roundtable with George Satari. But Joe, thank you. Appreciate it, guys. Good to be with you.
Thanks Chris.
Good to see you. Well, God bless you and have a nice 2026.
Yes.
And it seems it's been a year since I've talked to that guy. Been a year since I talked to Chris. All right,
it's been a year
everybody.
Since we've done a show.
It's been a year since we've been on the show. Hey, everybody, have a good night, okay? And
we want to thank Jansky for the gift tonight too. So appreciate everybody, and Michelle for Ohio. We do have your website and information, and we'll get in touch with you about coming on. But thank you for the Rumble rants tonight too. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, there was a comment somebody made that local action equals national impact. Whoever that was, or anybody else, if my comments about the importance of us, more of us, American patriotic citizens getting involved at the local level, if that touched a chord with you, find me on social media and get in touch. I can connect you with the Ohio Precinct Strategy team, and let's talk about getting better people filling the Republican Party, because that's the answer politically. This is political war, and if we don't have any people out there, any real good conservative people, we lose automatically.
We do. All right, thanks again. Thank you, Jonathan, Brian, George. Thanks again.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll be talking. See everybody soon. God bless.
Thanks, Ken.
Millions spent, but classrooms bare. Where the children at? Tell me, Mr. Governor, who's accountable for that?